Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani Pettiford. I'm here with Lakeisha Hines. What a perfect opportunity to have her on. We've been talking about how to sexually connect how to connect after an affair. So we're talking today about how to sexually connect, because that's the missing piece, right? That's the thing that we all are trying to figure out. How do we get through this? How do we overcome this? And so to have her on is going to be a pleasure today. Listen, before we get started, make sure you take an opportunity to like, share, and subscribe. Let the world know that we're here. Also, download that Couples Academy app. If you haven't done so, you don't know what you're missing out on. Last Chance Weekend is coming up this weekend, so make sure that you keep us in prayer for those couples who are engaging. If you would like to attend, it is not too late. You still have space and time to do so. We would love to connect with you. But there's a lot to talk through, a lot to get through. Lakeisha, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. All is well on this end, Sir Pettiford.
Love it. Sir Pettiford. I think that'll be my new title. So make sure all of you out there in the world put some sir on my name. Okay. Make sure you put some sir on my name. All right. We're gonna dive right in. We're talking about sexual connection after infidelity. Now, here's the reality. It's gonna show up differently for every couple. It's deep, Lakeisha, and I mean, nobody would know this more than you. There's certain couples who are very, very, very sexual prior to the discovery of an affair, and it lands one way. There's other couples who literally that just wasn't there. They didn't connect that way, right? So now trying to revive that after an affair is very difficult. I just did a private marriage intensive where, an affair took place maybe a couple months ago, and their sexual regularity is just as normal as it was prior to. And it's just like, wow, okay, so it didn't impact that. So it just shows up differently. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a whole bunch of variety in terms of its impact on the couples you've worked with.
Absolutely. And one pattern I think I've seen that I don't think I heard you mention was the ones who were not really having a whole lot of sex prior to infidelity, and then post infidelity, they're having more sex than ever before. Like, it intensifies, it increases, it multiplies. And on the surface, that may sound like a really good thing, but many times it's not a good thing. It's because the motive and intent, right? Everything is about motive and intent. And a lot of times the motive and the intent behind that drastic increase in the frequency of sex has to do with fear. And it has to do with, oh my gosh, if I don't give it to my spouse, they're going to cheat again. If I hold out, they're going to miss their affair partner. So it's that fear of loss. It's that fear of not getting that connection back. There's so much hurt and pain that happens post infidelity that they just want the bleeding to stop. You know what I mean? There's an open wound, it's hemorrhaging, and they are desperate to do whatever they have to do to stop that bleeding. And many, many times they use sex to do that. It's funny we're talking about this because yesterday on SOS, we were talking about makeup sex. And it's kind of the same thought process, right? If you think about it, that makeup sex is there because we've had this huge argument. We've had disconnect, disagreement. There's all that tension and energy that's built up, negative energy, right? And we're trying to do whatever we can to alleviate that and get to the pleasure place, right? We want to get to Pleasure Island, as my husband and I refer to it. So whatever we got to do to get to Pleasure Island, that's what we're going to do. And many times, because we don't have the right tools and strategies, we use sex to try to get us there.
Yeah. And what's interesting, obviously sex is very important and has a very significant place in marriage. It's not a cure-all though. And so to your earlier point, people who are using it as a cure-all, they're going to shortly realize that, wait a minute, this is not working. This is not doing what I thought it would do. And what happens is they go from sexual overdrive, then they shift into almost like an asexual relationship because they're trying to figure this thing out. And it's deep, Lakeisha, because we're going to go through all the stages, but it's interesting. There was a couple who came to us and literally, to your point, the affair took place and now they have sex at least 2 to 3 times a day. And I'm just like, okay, I'm starting to, okay, wait a minute. Let's get into the weeds of this. What is this
Mhm.
really about? Because
Yeah,
sex is not just a physical thing. You
correct.
bring all of who you are into the sexual experience, your body, your soul, your mind. So sex is the vehicle, right? So
Right.
either we're chasing a feeling or running away from a feeling.
Yes,
So
exactly.
what are we running toward? What are we using sex to actually accomplish? What is this really about? And so we had to get into that conversation. And once we discovered that there were some unhealthy motives or some
Mhm.
unhealthy things attached to it, I said, you know what you guys need? And I said, listen, I know this sounds crazy coming
I
from
know it.
somebody who's trying to restore your relationship, but maybe you need a sex fast.
Yep. I knew
Maybe you
it.
need to put sex to the side for just a little bit so that you could get to the real issue. Like, because a lot of times we focus on the fruit and not the root. Right.
Yes.
So we want to engage in sex because we're trying to solve a symptom and not the root cause. And so a sex fast, or said another way, a focus on true intimacy allows you to get to the root issue. And then once that root issue is addressed, then you can begin to reincorporate sex back into the relationship.
Hasani, you know a little something, huh? I guess
Well,
you I
well,
mean,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm not where you are at yet, but a little something, something, something.
little something, something. The root is important. And I mean, I think me as a coach, and I think you do this as well, Hassani, as a coach, when I'm meeting with a new client, the first I want to get back to the root. I want to get to the root of the issue, right? I want to get back to the basics. What was going on before infidelity ever happened in the first place? And it's important that we take a sex history because, oh, do you remember we had a client before that came through last chance weekend, and there had been some molestation in childhood, and
Mhm.
the husband never knew. They had been married umpteen years. The husband never knew this happened. It came out at that last chance weekend, and then the husband was experiencing two emotions. One emotion was relief because he's like, okay, great, now I get it. I understand now why you flinch every time I touch you. But then he went from that to anger because it's like, why didn't you tell me this? So it
Yes.
is important to get back to the root, get to the basics of what was going on again before, and go back to the root of really what the issue is. And even as an individual, get into the root issues of what's going on internally inside of you guys as individuals and how that's impacting you and how you're showing up in a relationship.
Lakeisha, there's so much shame and guilt attached to sex. I say
Mhm.
all the time, sex is one of the things that we often like to do, but we don't like to talk about it
Nope.
because it reveals our insecurities, our past traumas. And that's true intimacy. There's a couple that I work with, to your point, very similar. Like the spouse knew that the other person had sexual trauma, but they refused to talk about it. Like, I know something happened to you,
Wow.
but why don't you tell me? I'm not telling you. Don't bring
That's
it up.
happened.
I don't want to discuss it. I don't
Mhm.
trust you. We're not going there. And I mean, there
Yes.
was like a vitriol
Yes.
attached to this whole thing. And I'm just like, if this is the person that you've made the decision to spend the rest of your life with, and you've given them access to every part of your world, why would this be the thing?
Right.
I just don't trust them yet. And I'm just like, man, that's an intimacy issue, right?
Yes.
So you may be having sex and it may feel good, but there is a huge piece that you have not tapped into that would take that sexual experience to the next level. I got to read this comment. Ash says, you nailed it. I didn't even realize it was fear associated with our reconnection sexually after the infidelity. It was the worst choice for my husband and
Mhm.
I. Now I'm fasting from sex. So
Mhm.
that speaks to the point, right? And so I heard you say something, and because it's a comment, we're not talking. And when you said you are fasting from sex, my question then would be, is it a mutual decision
Mhm.
where you both have agreed, you know what, maybe we should do this? Because if you're fasting from sex and it's a unilateral decision that's been made, is your spouse on board? Has that created other issues?
Right.
Here's the reality. People hear a person like Lakeisha give a lot of this great information, or the other practitioners share some things, and they take this piece and they implement, and then they
Mhm.
take another piece and they implement. But sometimes these steps can be out of the proper, and I'm not talking about you, sis, so I'm not even talking about you, but sometimes these steps could be out of the
Right.
proper order, or there are other ingredients that are needed for certain things that aren't there, and what sounds good in principle doesn't show up right in all practicality. So my main thing is, let it be something you both are on, and put a timestamp to it, and put a purpose to it, so that you're maximizing the time that you've agreed to separate. So you're getting out of the sex fast what you ultimately need. Remember, it's less about what I'm taking off the table and what we're not
Mhm.
doing, and more of a focus on what we are doing. It's almost like fasting for real, right? When you put your plate down, okay,
Mhm.
great. I'm putting my plate down. I'm not eating. But wait a minute. Are you eating on the word of God? Are you praying? Are you spending time in prayer? Like, what are you doing? Because if you're not doing something to replace that meal time, then what are we really getting out of it? Does that make sense, Lakeisha?
Yes, Hassani, and I'm sorry, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, let me talk to the sisters for a moment. Brothers, excuse me. This is to help you though, but I need to talk to the sisters right quick. Ladies, stop getting me in trouble with your husband. Stop getting me in trouble with your man. Like, literally, you're like, Lakeisha said that we need to do blah, blah, blah. Listen, you are messing up an opportunity to get that brother into counseling. If you're telling him that I said certain things and you're going with all these demands. And to your point, Hassani, you guys not being on the same page, you're not being in agreement. And you're just going and telling him this is what we're going to do without getting his buy-in. That's wrong. That's not right. So stop getting me in trouble with your man. Okay. You guys listen to the show, watch the show together,
Yeah.
discuss it together, make an agreement together. Because if he's not on the same page with you, then it's creating more disconnect. And ultimately, I'm trying to bring you together mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and especially physically.
Yeah.
Okay. So make sure you guys are watching together and having those conversations, like Hassani said, together.
Yeah, that together piece is everything. Because if we're both drinking from the same well, reading the same book, going through the same course, we get these aha moments together, and we're like, we come up with a mutual decision, as opposed to, I done did all this research, watched all these videos, read all these books,
Right.
and for hours and for days and weeks, and now I have a 3-minute conversation with you, and now we're frustrated that our spouse doesn't have buy-in. Well, how
Hmm.
could they? They didn't go through the same journey that you went through. So that's an excellent point, Stephanie.
Well, he's trying to get more sex, and then you come and tell him, "I told you to do a sex fast."
Right, right. And it's because when Danielle first mentioned a sex fast, you listen.
What?
If you
Record
were
scratch.
if you were a fly on the wall in my house, you'd have been like, wow. And it took some serious conversations and some serious thought provoking, things that took place to get me to buy in. And now I'm glad
Right.
I did it, but it felt like an eternity during those 30 days. Anyway, there's another comment I want to go here. Stephanie says, sex wasn't an issue. It's crazy because after finding out, I started giving sex more often, and I'm sorry,
Mhm.
and I would have bad anxiety. Oh, okay, bad anxiety afterwards. But
Mhm.
now I'm just not into it anymore. When it was
It's never
never
like
like
that.
that. Shake my head. Yeah, because after a betrayal, it does something to the relationship, and now
Yes.
sex feels different. Not just physically feels different, but it lands different. It hits different. It's different emotionally. It's different mentally. It's different psychologically. So now you have to deal with all those other things. And that's why, Lakeisha, I'm so glad that we finally have a sex coach on our team that can guide and navigate couples through that. How would you respond to what she's saying?
I mean, this is spot on, and this happens all the time. Here's the thing, like, post infidelity, you're having a threesome and only one person knows about it. Like, that's what's happening. There is an invisible person in your bed, and the other person has no clue that they are there. You struggle literally with trying to remove thoughts about the affair partner from your mind. And it often comes up when you guys are trying to reconnect sexually. So when you push yourself back to have sex too soon, you're not mentally and emotionally prepared to deal with that because you will be triggered. But you have to have the proper tools and strategies to know how to manage those triggers, even in the midst of having sex. Sometimes, you have to start very slowly. And that's the thing that we don't want to do. And if you think about couples many times with sex, a lot of times, like women, they're like, take it slow. I just want you to take your time, take it slow. Men have a tendency to, you okay with taking it slow, but a lot of times you're a little bit more excited. So the slowness is not always what you're into. And I get that. But it's more important post infidelity than it's ever been before for you to slow down and take your time. There has to be more foreplay. There has to be more outer course. And a lot of people, that's another concept that, men a lot of times struggle with. What do you mean outer course? The whole goal is to be inside. And what do you mean? We're not doing that. You need that outer course experience because you're showing your spouse that it's not all about ejaculation. Ultimately, yes, that is the goal, but that's not the sole focus. The sole focus is pleasure. And the more time you spend engaging in foreplay and outer course, the more pleasurable your experience can be. So you really have to take your time when it comes to returning to sex after infidelity. So yes, she's spot on. This happens all the time.
That's a good point, and that requires a re-education on
Yes.
sex because, I mean, when you bring into play the different, erotic blueprints that exist, and that whole piece, like, really, it's just like, what's the point of all this? Like, can we just get to it? Like, I just want to get in it. Like, what's going on? And it can cause more problems because, in addition to the erotic blueprint, but the anxiety and all those other things, like, you got to take it slow. I want to go to this comment before a quick break. My fiance and I are slowing down and talking more and set a day for intimacy. I actually love it. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's something that every married couple should do. Like, slow down, take a time for intimacy. It's critically important. I remember when we were engaged. Well, first of all, we didn't have sex till we got married. It was hard. It was hard because it seemed like that engagement lasted a long time. But there was a natural building up of that intensity and that desire for the day that we actually said I do. But here's the reality: when you're engaged, especially for those who are not married. Like, so if you're not married and you've had sex, I get it because that's just the world we're in. But when you take that pause and take that break, it really helps because a lot of times when you're dating, sex is a part of it. So let's just say you've been dating for 4 months, but you had sex the second week. For now, that's too long. Sometimes people having sex the first week, right? According to something called relationship developmental lag, your relationship could be 4 months old, but if you introduce sex the second week, your relationship's only 2 weeks old. Why? Because once sex enters in, it becomes such of the main focus. So now your activities, your conversations, your interactions, your desire is all about that. And so the natural emotional, mental, developmental connection hasn't had time to properly develop because sex has become the main thrust, no pun intended. So taking sex off the table allows you to develop intimacy in those other areas so that when you incorporate sex back in, it's just altogether different.
Hassani, listen, I will say 90% of the couples who come to me with sex problems, issues, concerns, or whatever, it is nothing physical. It's an intimacy issue. Like 90% of the time, that's what it is. And so if we deal with the issues outside of the bedroom, we minimize the issues inside of the bedroom.
Wow. Whoa. Say that one more time because that's worthy of a... Say that again.
If we maximize, right? If we maximize dealing with the issues outside of the bedroom, then we minimize the issues inside of the bedroom.
Wow, because so many people are focused on what happens inside the bedroom and not outside, and we're trying to solve a inside bedroom issue with inside solutions, and really the solution is what happens outside the bedroom. That is powerful. That is, guys, I hope you got that. Listen, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. There's so many comments. Sex is one of those things people love talking about. They don't like talking to their partner about it, but they certainly like talking about it on the show. Listen, we'll be right back. Stay tuned, and we'll continue this conversation.
Excited about Foundation. It is a new group program where couples are gathering from all around the world twice a week, couples who just want to have a thriving, successful, amazing marriage. No really well-built house is built without a foundation. As a matter of fact, without a foundation, it can't stand. It would just crumble right into the ground. We are going to interview experts and other successful couples so that you can get a glimpse into the lives of other people who are doing what it is that you desire to do, who have and who are accomplishing what it is that you want to accomplish. And we also have over 500 videos available for you to watch of all of our teaching. Everything that we've ever done, every topic that we've ever covered will be accessible to you.
So guys, if this sounds exciting to you and if this sounds like something you've been waiting for, go ahead and just give it a try. We're literally giving away a 15-day trial for $1. And then after that, it's simply $3 a day. And so, is your marriage worth it? Is your future worth it? Join the community today. Just click that button and meet us on the other side.
Welcome back. Welcome back. You are watching the Couples Academy show. I'm here with Sir Pettiford. From now on, put some Sir on his name. I see Brother Gonzalez. He already follows suit. He followed directions and he says Sir Pettiford. Good morning. I want to shout out the people who are here. Hello, Brittany. Hello, Team Smith. And I think it's in Dulacrim. I love it. Mr. Ben. Hello, Ash. And did I miss anybody? Stephanie, Carrie. Thank you guys for watching. Cali Power Couple. Daryl, he said, look, good morning. I really need this one. Talk to me. We talking to you, my brother. We are talking directly to you. And Papette, there was a comment in the chat that I absolutely love. And it's from Aisha. Good morning, my sis. She says, intimacy was so difficult for me post-disclosure. I felt so violated by the betrayal, like my consent was taken away because I was not informed. Aisha, thank you for your comment, because I talked about how a lot of times post infidelity, we're in this threesome and only one person knows about it because the affair partner is in the mind of the betrayed and they're in the bedroom with them. But there's the other side of this too, right? When the affair was actually going on, you literally are in another form of a threesome, it feels like. And again, now the betrayed is the one who doesn't realize that that's what's going on. So perfect way to explain that and give us an analogy of that, because it's true. You really do feel as if your consent is taken away. You were not asked, you didn't get consent. You were not asked if you wanted to participate or if it was okay. The betrayer actually took matters into their own hands and spoke for you, made decisions for you, and literally they did take away your right to choose. So I completely understand that. And I think as you guys move toward healing and transformation, it's so important that as you're moving back into sex and moving back into intimacy, consent is key. and consent every step of the way. Are you even ready to have conversations about
Mm,
sex? Let's get consent there. Then if you're okay with having conversations and you move beyond that, okay, now are you okay to try engaging in some form of sexual activity? And then what does that look, feel, and sound like? Are we only engaging in outer course? Are we kissing? Are we holding hands? Are we going all the way with intercourse? Like, there has to be consent received every single step of the way. And even when you're physically ready, you say that you're physically ready to engage.
mm,
Literally, when you're in the middle of having sex, is this okay? Are you
mm.
okay? Can I continue? Can we keep going? Getting consent every step of the way is critical post infidelity. So thank you so much for your comment.
I love the whole outer course, inner course. Is there a holy of holies?
Is there a holy of holies?
Is that when the inner course turns to the ultimate orgasm? You went from outer course to inner course to the holy of
Well,
holies?
the outer course is excluding penetration,
Right.
right? It's all about physical touch. And I wanted to tell you guys about this wheel of consent. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Hassani, have you heard of it before?
No, no, not at all.
Okay, so there's so much research out there, and it is literally by a woman named Betty Martin. You can go to her website, bettymartin.org, and she talks about the wheel of consent in 4 quadrants. And there's one quadrant that's about giving, there's another quadrant about taking, another quadrant about allowing, and then another one about receiving. And she's really just talking about all of the possibilities that you can have to take your level of touch to another level, because there's so much power in our hands. And if we understand exactly how powerful these hands are, then we can really change the way that we go about touching our partners. It's so exciting. So I urge you all to learn as much as you can about that touch, because it's so important. So outer course really is about the not only touch, but how you go about touching your partner and how they want to be touched. It's a give and take type of thing. And you're really just focused on taking care of each other, experiencing pleasure, and taking the penetration off the table, because
Mm,
that's what causes a lot of anxiety with a lot of couples, is the actual art of penetration, like having to go through with penetration and the pressure of making that person orgasm or you achieving one yourself. There was a couple I remember, they were struggling with, one would orgasm all the time, the other one didn't. And the one who didn't, of course, the partner feels awful that they're not having an orgasm. So they would literally be asking, like, okay, did you go? Did you get one? Did you have one? And then there was so much pressure on that person who was struggling to orgasm to the point where they started lying and said, yeah, I did. So we don't want that. So outer
mm-mm.
course takes that pressure and that anxiety off the table for both parties, and we can just focus on pleasure, which ultimately, isn't that what we're supposed to be getting out of sex anyway?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm just sitting here listening like everyone else is listening. And I just want to give you a shout out for just your level of expertise and competency in this space. You know, overwhelmingly, most couples struggle with sex on some level, in some way, in some form. Please, you need to be booking Lakeisha Hines. You need to book her for sessions with your spouse, because nothing's just going to work itself out. Like, you have to be intentional. That whole outer course, like that will you just broke down, like that is awesome. That needs to be a deep dive teaching. We talked about doing another sexual masterclass, and obviously, Lakeisha, you're going to be the one leading that out. And so I would encourage everybody who's watching right now, when we announce when this masterclass comes, that you sign up, because man, before we even can talk about the sex, because there's a big resistance that the betrayed spouse has to it. Before we can even talk about that, that's the first thing you think about. Let's talk about this outer course thing. And then to the whole, did you come yet? Did you come yet? Did you get it? Did you get it? That speaks to sexual unalignment, if that's the word, unalignment, in alignment, whatever. The point is, if I got to ask,
Right.
did it happen? Something's wrong right there. But I
Yeah.
will say that sex is a skill, just like anything else. Just like you need to develop your communication skills, you have to develop your sexual skills. And so there could be a number of reasons why someone isn't orgasming, or orgasming. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm all over the place. But the point is, you need to get with Lakeisha because she is the one who can guide you through this. Listen, I want to hit Brittany really quickly. Good morning. My husband and I are very close to divorce. Papers have been filed. However, after disclosure, him and I are still intimate and it helps feel closer, but he still wants the divorce. Could you speak to that, Lakeisha?
Yes. Oh my goodness, Brittany. So we've seen this multiple times. And I just want to say to you, I understand that desire to want to feel close to your husband. Actually, it's still your husband. You're not legally divorced yet. So I completely understand wanting to have that connection with your husband, but at what cost, sis? What is that doing to you emotionally and mentally? Every time you say yes, you're saying no to your healing every single time. And keep in mind, the men enter us. We don't enter them. They enter us. So what you're doing is you're inviting him to not only enter you physically, but to enter your heart and your mind and your spirit every time you say yes. So now if you're doing it because you just want to get your rocks off, okay, cool. But you know it's so much more than that. It's never just that, typically for women, right? There's always an emotion, not always, most times there's an emotion attached to that. So if you guys are moving forward with a divorce, you're going to have to cut that off. Make him miss it. Maybe he will stay. He's getting everything that he wants right now. And why are you all not coming to Last Chance Weekend? That's what I'm trying to understand. I don't care that your papers have been filed. There is still hope for your relationship. And if you're still having sex, you can still be working on this relationship. So we need to see you at Last Chance Weekend. When you coming?
It's a great question. It seems like she's engaging in sex with him to keep him from leaving because he wants the divorce. He's filing papers. So, if we come together, maybe this will turn him around. And so I get that that's probably your attempt, but it's not working. And listen, you don't have to figure this thing out on your own. Get help. Reach out to us. It's not too late. I can't tell you how many individuals came here and the ink was still wet on the paper of the filing. And yet things turned around and people made decisions to end proceedings and move back in together and make all types of arrangements at a Last Chance Weekend. Yes. So listen, reach out to us. We would love to work with you. Lakeisha, what's crazy is we didn't even get to point number one. We were just organically talking about this topic because there's so much to talk about and there'd be no better person to talk about this with than you. Hope I'm not putting you on your spot. I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but I would, you may be traveling. I don't know if you can do it, but if you're available, we'll see, whatever. But the point is we got to have a part two to this.
Invitation from Sir Pettiford. You don't deny Sir Pettiford. Okay.
You know what? I'm going to work this Sir Pettiford. I'm going to use this to
created a monster.
Let me see if this works with Danielle. I'm going to see if this works with Danielle.
No, sir. Don't you go to Madam Pettiford and tell her Lakeisha said you need to call me Sir Pettiford.
Lakeisha said.
I want my job.
Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We've been talking about how to sexually connect with your spouse after infidelity. We have to do a part two tomorrow. There's so much to get to that we haven't even touched on. But until then, as Lakeisha said, sit down with your spouse, watch this video together, and tune in tomorrow together, whether you're physically together or whether one's driving, one's at home. But let's get connected. Like, if we're going to be connected, then let's come together and do this. So see you in the morning. Have a great day. Love you guys.